Okay, so this is going to be a log covering the research section of my final major project. I'm just going to go through my research work. I see no need to screen record because all the research will be there laid out in the final thing. So the design based research I think was probably the biggest chunk of it because the building is the biggest chunk of my film. It's taking up the most time in my project as far as my planning is going. Yeah, it'll be the thing I do the most of, and it's really the anchor of the entire project, the building, and it's intended that way, obviously, um, because going into prop making, I wanted to do a film which is like the ultimate prop making challenge to construct more or less everything that you see on camera, which is a daunting task, obviously. So, design-based research. I looked through that film Man O' Man, and I wrote a good deal about it. I wasn't the film itself was it looked great, and it gave me certainly a lot of ideas. Not sure if I was such a massive fan of the film itself, but I definitely think I picked that apart as much as I possibly could. And I think it's influenced some of the puppet making in that I did tests with different styles of the puppets, but I more or less went back to what I originally planned anyway. It's definitely encouraged different ideas, and I definitely think that's beneficial to me, whether or not I take those ideas forward. Just having the experimentation there. Yeah, the scenery in it was really good. I liked that it wasn't all smooth sculpted. That they used a lot of texture, and I've seen that in films I've looked at since, design wise. The Unknown Mortal Orchestra music video was the first one I saw with Rod Puppetry, which, having looked through a few of them, I'm not a massive fan of the music video really in itself and the aesthetic, but I owe it making me think I should do this with Rod puppets because stop motion would be such a daunting task, and I've got no experience in it. Whereas with rod puppetry, if I get the puppetry wrong, I take 5 seconds, stop the recording, start again. I have another go at it, rather than I take an hour making something stupid like 5 seconds, and that's it. That's my only chance at it. What I didn't really cover a lot in the research, but I thought about a lot, was the character of the puppeteer himself, because the concept in of itself is a puppeteer controlling a puppet of himself that's working in a workshop. That was the concept, and I thought it'd be cool to make. And the levels of interpretation came to me afterwards. But this could very easily be a really light-hearted film, like a happy one. And I think I'm more in the direction of pushing it darker, just because, well, not just because, but partially because I definitely think that a film that encourages more of an uncomfortable feel in the audience will push those different levels of interpretation and perhaps cause them to think about it. Because I think a film being joyous and nice to watch can be like really like enjoyable to watch and like sing song and colourful can seem like the reason for making it in itself. Whereas I'd like my film to for people to think about it, to think there must be more under the surface there, because in itself, I'm not going to say like in itself it wasn't that cool, but I wouldn't have made it like that unless there were other levels. And also, I thought from the perspective of the character of someone who's made a puppet of themselves and is like playing through their own lives, that's got to come from a tortured or at least contemplative place. Um, I don't think fundamentally you do that for a laugh. Make a puppet of you. Yeah, I think that comes from a sad place and a feeling of a lack of control. But that's just at a very basic diegetic level. Um, what I tried looking into more in my research, and I didn't see many ways about it, was talking to people about the different levels of interpretation they could take from it. So talking through my interpretations of the concept. So the basic idea of the film as it stands, from some conversations I've had, I've got it down to it starts off with a puppeteer, well, a puppet maker, in a workshop, which is a puppet in himself, and he's carving away at some wood, building some puppets, or whatever, just working away in the workshop. And the puppet sort of comes to a realization that he's not in control of himself, and he pulls out the rods from his arms and casts them to the ground. And then it's revealed that he was being controlled by the real version of himself in a way. And then at the end, something like a drop of water or a noise draws the character's attention up to the ceiling at the end, which I initially thought, that brings up questions about God and a creator and free will and control. Like Matrixy stuff. If I'm controlling the puppet of myself, how do that brings up fundamental questions about what it is to have free will and be in control, and if there is a God, how much do we really have? How much choice do we have over what happens to us, and how much control do we have over ourselves? What is reality? That sort of thing. So he's almost looking up, contemplating, his part in everything, and which link he is in the chain, where he is in the hierarchy of control. If how much is he in control of his own life? And through conversations with Ben, which is what I talked to Ben a bit, and I thought, oh, this is great. I'll just talk to people about the concept, and they'll have loads of stuff to say, like Ben did. But no one has since. But Ben was saying, in a weird way, we're puppeteers of our own lives. And then he was talking about that for a bit, and then I said, I guess we're puppeteers in ourselves in a way, because this was in response to something Ben had said. I can't quite remember what, but I came up with we don't always do what we want. We do things. There's a balance of what we want and what we should do. I woke up at like 8 o'clock this morning. I didn't want to get out of bed, but I knew that I should get out of bed. And those different parts of my brain. I mean, who's in control? What parts are in control? And why are some parts overriding other parts? Why aren't we just hedonistic? And what? That could be broken down neurologically, but I don't necessarily see how that would benefit my little puppet film. Also, he was talking to me about how we're puppets of society, and how much are we really in control in control of our own lives, considering how everything's regimented and laid out for us, and how we're born into constructs and stuff, which is something that I didn't think about, and I probably wouldn't have thought about, and I probably wouldn't have. But what that encouraged me to do was keep the concept vague. Don't be pointing the audience in the direction of God. Don't be pointing the audience in the direction of anything. If they want to watch a film and see a puppet, then that's great as well. It should be cool to look at enough that people don't have to say, "Oh, I didn't quite get it." But I'd like to keep that intact, and I thought it was great that he had a different interpretation of the puppet theme. And as much as people like to say, "Oh yeah, no, my film is very ambiguous," I think you certainly have to have some idea of your ideas of it. And of course, it all started from the concept, like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if a puppet had puppets?" But then it definitely became, and for me, it is about a creator, like man and God type relationship, and that kind of contemplation. But at the same time, I don't want to force that on anyone, and I think it's great if people can get different things about it, and I think it's great if people can get nothing out of it. Because the fact that 10 different people can watch the same film, but they're experiencing different films, seems incredible to me. whether or not that's a better project, I like the idea of it anyway. Um, the character in itself, I thought they'd probably be more about. I know about like recluse artists and people who tuck themselves away in their workshops, but yeah, to be honest, it wasn't. It was a hard thing to try and delve into the character of a puppet maker because most of them nowadays. I mean, you watch films where it's kind of like romanticized, that it's very sort of very sad, lonely work, like Geppetto and I think there was a puppet maker in Jonathan Creek who was a big depressed recluse, and that was the only thing he could do. But most of them nowadays, I mean, being a puppet maker is so hard to do and make money that none of them are miserable. They're all living the dream, which isn't what I wanted to represent in my film. I wanted to have the character be troubled, and all of this, the failure with the vox pops, and not being able to really pick apart the mindset of the kind of character that I wanted to steer it to, drove me to keeping it as a singular vision, and using less input from other sources and just trying to come up with it all by myself, which I think is fine. And the fact that I've considered the outside influences, I'm sure, have influenced how I've put everything together. Whether or not I could pin that down, that's the difficulty. I mean, I watch in terms of the design-based research, I watch at least one or two films every week because I love films. I'm constantly, and not just films that I fancy. Films that I hear are good, or films that are important to build up a catalogue of just different images and colour schemes and techniques in my brain. And they all. I don't think I've watched a film recently that I think hasn't influenced something that I'll do in the future in terms of aesthetics, and because I've watched a lot of good films recently. You watch a film and then you find out a little bit about it, and you get sent down the trail for different ones. I've got a big list to work through. A couple that come to mind, which I think which feature in the research in terms of colour scheme and set design, were Welcome to Collinswood, which I thought was really good. In the way that the brown and mainly brown, but also a lot of earth tone colour palette gave the film sort of a weird timelessness. But of course, all this is discussed in the research. And I thought the sets in Scott Pilgrim were really great. They stuck to an earth tone colour palette for the sets, also, but they didn't get bogged down in browns in the same way that Welcome to Collinswood did. Not that I didn't really like the browns in Welcome to Collinswood, but I think in terms of a miniature scene, sticking to that many browns, you'd lose so much depth, especially with realistic lighting. Anyway, all of this features in the research, but the point being, it's pretty difficult for me to pinpoint all the stuff that has influenced all of the aesthetics, because I'm glad to say that there's a lot of input going in terms of film and aesthetics. Because I'm constantly taking in art in a way, which is ideal for a film student, obviously. The trouble is, I'm not always taking notes about it, and I can't always track it down. So I don't get marks for that in the research. But I do think it's improved the film in the long run. Well, it will do. I think the film will be better for it, for the fact that I watch all films and that. Yeah, that film was great for costume. Costume's something I'm dreading. I take pride in my sewing skills, but it is pretty slapdash. Currently I'm good at hemming shirts and trousers and stuff. I used to do a lot of precise stuff in my teens because I didn't have any friends. But anyway, that's a little way off. And yeah, a lot of stop motion films were really great for set design and characters. And I was drawn to the grittier ones because I think having textures in a miniature scene gives it an awful lot more depth and realism, because things could easily be all smooth, or everything could be the same texture, like felty, like kids TV construction, kind of like that Unknown Mortal Orchestra video was. It was all felty and like kids TV, but some of these they used a lot of not necessarily super realistic textures, but everything had a texture. I mean, a lot of them used fabric for most of the sets, which I thought was fantastic. I guess I'm drawn to texture as a person. I'm definitely drawn to earth tone color palettes, not just for the function that I think they produce in films. I'm drawn to earth tone color palettes on a personal level. I wear a lot of those clothes. I'm drawn to clothes that are textured rather than plain, I guess. But I do think it gives it a lot more depth. I mean, if I was watching, okay, so the pictures I'm looking at now are for, what was it called? It's like the one about a tumor, Benini or whatever. Anyway, yeah, if it had been all smooth, all sculpted and painted, I wouldn't have any indication of scale, which I guess isn't a problem. But at the same, it would lose a lot of depth and it'd lose a lot of realism. And the way that they've built it, I think, draws the eye the perfect amount. You want to look at the set, but at the same time, it's not. It seems like a real set. I mean, he's got dirty dishes in the sink. It seems lived in, and it seems like it feels like they've made the character lives in that flat, and that flat is a product of the amount of time that he's spent there, rather than we've built this flat because this is what we're trying to communicate to the audience. And that's definitely an effect I'd love to replicate. This is where this character puts this desk, and this is where he keeps his tools. Because when he wants to carve something, that is where he's going to reach. Rather than, oh, look at all of this stuff that I have made to put in front of your eyes. And I'm definitely drawn to the way that they shot, which was uncompromising. It was uncompromisingly cinematic. They shot it as if they were shooting an actual scene in that room. And a lot of these stop motion films, they do seem to have built the full room rather than built each shot individually, like the Man O' Man one seemed to from behind the scenes shots. Built each shot individually because the storyboard was perfect. It was to be perfectly adhered to. In stop motion, I'm sure the storyboard was to be perfectly adhered to, but at the same time, I think there's artistic value to creating a whole room in itself, and then maybe forming the storyboard around that more than the other way round. What was I going to say after that? Sorry. So yeah, the whole set. I'll have to move on. Sorry, I'm sure there was something else I was going to say about the sets and stop motion films. But yeah, and what I've written, obviously, I'm more aware of. But I'm sure there's, when I'm building the sets, I'm not necessarily gonna be constantly remembering that one stop motion film that I watched, but the input's there. It's in the back of my mind, and it's in like the catalogue of images that are floating around my head. Hopefully. So obviously, I've done a lot of research into just wood tools and like clamps and vices and saws and stuff, just to make it clear to myself what I'm gonna need and be aware of the purpose of it rather than what is going to be cool. I want to build the room around function rather than aesthetic to a degree. Oh yeah, okay. I've kind of remembered something like what I was going to say. So the way that they've shot it in an uncompromising cinematic way means that it looks and feels like a film, in the way it's directed. And the heartbreaker of that is a lot of stuff that they've built won't get to, if they have indeed built the whole room like it appears they have from some of these wides, where there's stuff cut off at the edges. Not all of it's going to get shown, and I'm sure there's going to be stuff that I build that won't even make it to the final cut, that won't ever get seen. But it's worth it to have it feel like a film uncompromisingly, rather than to try and crowbar in shots to show off all the cool crap I'll have built. If it comes off, you know. I'm saying that, it's all up in the distance, it could all go terrible. Who knows? Ah, this desk, this homemade looking, weird massive desk. Oh, okay. I've just been looking through. Yeah, okay. This big weird desk thing, and one of the things I've spotted, which I saw in another one of the Puppeteers things without arms and stuff. It was kind of like a hangman thing, where it's like a female form, like one of those artistic posable dolls that you draw from, but it was hanging on like a puppeteer's desk, which I couldn't find any background of. But this desk has just got loads and loads of tools about it. Looks like the desk is hand built with different drawers and different sizes drawers and stuff, and it's very much ordered chaos. I think it just looks really great. I think I wrote about this desk for about half an hour, just picking it apart. I don't know. I'm sure I build a bit of furniture like it. That'll be as much as I probably take from it. And then a lot of the stuff about color scheme stuff I will consult while building for sure. And a lot of these mood boards I'll look over just throughout the whole research. I mean, just because I haven't included all the images that are in the research, I'll try and keep in mind. But the mood boards will be fairly helpful. Some of the miniature props I found, yeah, they'd be great things to replicate. The design-based research I'm pleased with. It may not be totally complete. I think because along the way, I'm sure there's going to be more functional design-based research. I'll get to a point where I don't quite know how to make something, and I'll consult some websites. But in terms of aesthetically, I've got a pretty strong idea. And even if I didn't have a pretty strong idea, I'd have a good catalogue of images and influences to draw from. But I think I've got a fairly strong idea off the back of the design research. So that's a good thing. Target audience was one that I kind of worked my way out of in the pre-research that I did. Where I talked about. So I'll read through this and I'll try and discuss it as I go along. I kind of think when authors read their own audiobooks, they must be tempted at some point to explain themselves while telling a story about themselves. That sort of thing, anyway. So I'm at a conflict as to the importance of this aspect of the research target audience. Although it is good practice for an essential element of the media industry. Yeah, okay, that makes sense actually. Although it's good practice for an essential element of the media industry, this is my project, and from an artistic standpoint, I shouldn't base my decisions on what 30 other people say. I also don't see the inherent value of making something aimed at a certain group, as it doesn't really matter much to me whether people watch it. Furthermore, I think the principle for small-scale projects such as this should be to try and make something good, and some people ought to appreciate it. My main priority is making something that I'm proud of. I come off as a little bit of a bellend there, and I've discussed this with the tutors before, and they've made strong points as to why you should do target audiences. I've acknowledged it, and then sort of given a middle finger to it in a way, just saying, "Oh, I'm all clever and artistic, and it should just be my vision." Honestly, but that's the difference is I don't see a future in where I'm making films that I want people to watch financially. Prop making, I can understand all of the principles I should adhere to there. In terms of filmmaking, I'm going to go forward as a hobbyist, and I'd like to be a really good hobbyist in a way, which is, I guess, another weak justification of it. But in terms of target audience as well, from all the films that I've watched of this style, they seem to have been they seem to have all been like singular vision stuff made by relatively small crews. Not obviously much bigger and more expensive than what I'm making, and they will have had to do target audience stuff. But hardly anyone's seen them. They're not big. They're not big successful films. They're projects that I believe were a singular vision that were funded off of the credits of the directors and designers and the crew and stuff. But I think, as far as I can tell, they were trusted to make a good film in a kind of if you build it they will come sort of way, rather than trying to tailor it to a certain audience. I don't. But to be honest, the main trouble I see with target audience is if I find out, I could find out who might like the film, but I honestly don't see it. And from people I've talked to, I don't see it as being a specific group of people. And I don't to be yeah, I don't see it as being a specific group of people. People from 7 to 70 like puppets, but a small amount of them. Um, and I don't see a film like this, the one I'm making, appearing on any big platforms, or going to and also if target audience came up, if target audience is if I wanted to target it to a certain audience, and there were certain things I'd have to change about the film to meet those expectations of people, or to try and appeal to a certain group of people, I don't know whether I'd do them. The fear is I wouldn't want to do research that I would ignore. All the research it's in principle, it's like I don't have any opinions that I wouldn't have challenged. Otherwise, I'm relatively impartial on it, you know. But at the same time, I don't see the point in. I'm not explaining myself well. I don't see the point in doing research when there's a good opportunity that I'm not going to take. And when there's a strong chance that I really don't think I'm going to take anything from it, and there's a strong risk that I'm going to contradict myself, say, look, I've done all this research into target audience, but I'm not going to take any of the advice from it, which I think is almost worse than justifying not doing target audience research. However poorly, looking back, I think I've justified it. Okay, just lost the page, sorry. There it is. A lot of research came with the prop making, less formal research. Well, I say there's a lot of research come with the prop making. I haven't done any of it. I've done all the basics. I've done it, but the research for the prop making happens while I'm building, basically, as I go along, and that's advice I've got from a guy who was in prop making. You know, learn by doing. And from a problem solving point of view, which is coming up on the final major, don't try and solve. From a building standpoint, you shouldn't try and solve problems you haven't had yet, because I think he said something like all of the mistakes you make form a plan for the finished product. It's like evolution of man. Every time you build something, it gets better and better, rather than trying to nail it first time. Because it's like you can't learn to, I don't know, sail from a book. You have to go out and do it. You have to wrap your hands around stuff, and that's true for all handcrafts, I suppose. Anyway. Yeah, I've got some production research. Tricky to find, honestly, stuff about filming miniature scenes. There's stuff to do with photography, to do with miniature scenes, which, and even that is scarce. But filming miniature scenes, there's got to be very specific principles to it. But I think I've just got to use the combination of the knowledge I've built up over the 2 years of college and essentially scale it down to a smaller scene is all I can do. Because the resources aren't really strong on that, and I can't see much more than just light it like a normal studio scene. There's not loads of principles to do with the camera that I've encountered. To be honest, when I looked up stuff to do with filming miniatures, it is all to do with miniature integration into live action and forced perspective. My voice is kind of hurting at the moment. I think okay, so I'll wrap it up there. I think the design-based research, I'm not sure how fantastic it is as a piece of writing, but I definitely feel confident that it's done the job in getting me to the point where I can build the crap out of it and design it as it should be. Okay, thanks.